Hello, and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind podcast. I'm your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend, Michael Whitford.
Hey!
So today, we're going to be talking about Willow, episode 7, titled
Beyond the Shattered Sea.
Beyond the Shattered Sea, the penultimate episode for Willow Season 1 on Disney+. So, before we dive in here, I'm going to give out the typical reminders. If you want to get in contact with the show, you can send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. You could get us on Twitter, which is @fantasyrewind, or on Instagram, which is @fantasyrewindpod. All right, so without any further delay, let's dive into the rewind.
Fantasy Rewind. All right, Dylan. Thoughts on the overall episode, and go.
So, my overarching thoughts on this episode are complicated. Because, for me, there was a lot in this episode I actually really enjoyed and I really liked. Like, Graydon being revealed as a wizard, which we totally called.
Woo!
I really liked some of the cinematography that they did in this episode as well. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, the fighting choreography
was great. I loved seeing Allura actually, like, train for real in, like, battle magic and get knocked on her butt by Willow before she, like, got hog wild on him. But all in all, I felt like this episode tried to fit so much into it that it hurt itself by trying to do too much. Like,
Agreed.
I personally felt like this felt like the longest episode of the season, but it also...
It was.
Yeah, I was gonna say, but it also was. And I think that it felt so long because there were so many plot points, so many beats that, like, could have been erased. Like, seriously, what was the deal with going to that cabin there? Like, so Kit could rest? Okay, they could have made a stop to grab the sled and kept on going. Like, that whole 10 to 15 minutes of that cabin scene could have been eliminated with no consequence.
And I think there is a connection there, and maybe we just haven't talked through it. So why don't we start? Yeah, I mean, we'll kind of start this episode off by just kind of talking about how that was sort of interweaving Eric and the girl who were at the Memorial City and Allura Dannon and company. Like, their stories were kind of going back and forth. Now, we see them almost first thing, like after, you know, they get Kit out of the goo.
Yeah, the goo.
And she almost, like, touches hands with Eric because he's diving through the same goo. And you were right, it is the liquid of evil. But after she gets sucked out of that by Allura Dannon's spell, they leave and they stumble to the shattered sea, and then they're going to start crossing it, and they end up at the hut. And it's some old kooky knight. His name was Zeb. He's the ferryman. I thought he was pretty funny, but I think they didn't spend enough time here because I think there was a lot of really interesting things that we should have had maybe just a few more connections of. But he brought up being from Kashmir and how he was out there. He was searching for something he doesn't even remember anymore. Was it a princess? And I think it was a princess, and I think we've met the princess, and it's the crown.
Right.
And because, like, this was the thing that didn't make sense to me, so I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here to catch up to your point, but when they're staying at the old man's place, he wants them to stay because the Gales are coming.
Right. He's like the delay that's called letting the Gales catch up to them.
Yeah. And why would he do that? You know?
Yeah, you got me.
He talks about being a knight, searching for this princess. I'm thinking he's in cahoots or was working with the crone, because we find out that the crone was the girl, who we don't still get a name, but was a princess of Kashmir, supposedly. And it sounds like there's not enough connection there yet for us to really understand the full breadth of the crone's story, but it seems like at one point she was a princess of Kashmir, which was this community where everyone had everything they wanted, but they just had to follow certain rules. But this cult of the worm started doing these rites and everything else, and then they eventually broke in and kidnapped the princess, and she was the princess, and you sort of figure out, like, no, actually, she's the crone, and it seems like she's, wanted. I would almost think she was the one that orchestrated everything. If she was kidnapped or whatever, she probably took over or escaped Kashmir. But it's kind of left really uncertain at this point. But I think when we think about them stopping at the ferryman, the purpose was to just sort of layer in these connections about Kashmir, about the princess, and
yeah. So what I kind of meant by they could have just eliminated this whole scene at the hut there is because it seems to me like the purpose of this episode, the purpose of Beyond the Shattered Sea, was just that, to get beyond the Shattered Sea. And so we spend a good chunk of the episode traveling through this waste of the sea with those awesome training montages going on throughout it. So those great visuals that I actually really did enjoy. But it's also so much was trying to be packed in there, Allura actually training, them trying to cross the Shattered Sea, Eric and the Crone's storyline, because of course she's the Crone. It was so obvious. And all of that was going on, and that alone would have made for a full episode. But they tried to shove in even more with this unnecessary part about Kit needing to rest after being resuscitated from the goo, all of that going on there. And to me, why I said it felt like it was unnecessary was just it didn't provide a full enough connection to the Eric and Crone storyline for me to be satisfied with them spending time there with this old timer and hearing his stories and seeing him try and hold them for the Gales. And so I didn't think that it was worth the time spent there for what we got.
That's fair. I do think after watching the episode and what you said, maybe what they should have done was they should have taken Eric and the Crone sort of storyline and either made that part of next episode and sort of had it been just all one big flashback.
Yeah.
Sort of so we have the whole episode and it's really just focused on Willow and company this time. After maybe that initial Eric scene. And maybe they throw in one other thing as a teaser sort of type scene, maybe him finally stumbling through and just her picking him up. But it could have been the end of the episode is how it was, where they come in, Kit and Allura Dan come into the Memorial City and, oh, it's Eric, but wait. Ooh, he's such a bad boy now. His hair's cut.
I was going to say, he got a haircut. He's evil now.
Yeah. And he's got this weird kind of face, smirky, I don't know what it is, but yeah. I mean, they could have ended with that and it'd been oh no, what happened to Eric? And then the next episode, because they like to do this sort of
how we got here.
It doesn't take itself too serious, sort of humor. It started the next episode, they're literally Eric's just long time no see. And they're what happened to you? And then he's huh. And then it's just flashback. And then it's nothing. I saw the light or something that. Something stupid. Before he goes and kills him.
He's not going to kill him.
Or whatever he's going to do. It's going to be interesting to see what changes have actually happened to him. Because we know his grandmother was at one point a very good person turned evil. And I think, I don't know. I think that was one of my issues with this episode, though, and I know we kind of keep going around, but it's okay. We're kind of hitting at pretty much everything. Was that the whole, way the Crone turned him was just
exactly.
I'm just going to starve you off from the rest of the world and make you come to me and just be willing to do whatever just so you have a drink. Or I was just that's so stupid, though.
Yeah. So I want to go to this part really quick because you brought it up. Yeah. I was gonna wait, but I guess we're here. So first of all, the Crone tries to thirst trap Eric, and he's not having it. He's no, I'm gonna stay loyal to Dove, and
she's you're ready to be turned.
Yeah. And so also I want to bring up that Eric did know her name was Brunhilde because he names drops Brunhilde. He's her name's Brunhilde, just call her Dove. never mind. It's a whole thing. But yeah, when Eric goes from resisting the crone's advances to crawling on his hands and knees, begging for anything from her, I was like, wait, how did we even get here? Like, this makes no sense.
Yeah.
And I guess, like,
he ran around again for months or weeks, what felt like that, and never found anything. But my thing is like, did he not see the giant waterfall that apparently everyone's just throwing themselves off of?
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is I think that, again, it was a magical barrier that prevented him from leaving the city and everything.
Oh, absolutely.
But we totally called that he was drinking the evil goo from the fountain there. And
didn't really have much of an impact on him, though, did
that
it?
we saw so far. But you heard the crone when she was like, wait, you drank this? And he's like, yeah, it looks nasty, but it's good. And so she's like, ooh, victory. Like, just kind of like, yeah, let's chow down. Let's get in on this. And so she starts going and drinking it as well. And so she was happy that he was drinking the water. And so, again, I have the feeling that drinking the liquid evil is going to, like, make him more susceptible to evil and kind of get him kind of primed up and release his inner bad boy. As we saw, like, he kind of went reverse Super Saiyan where his hair didn't grow. It kind of shrunk. And now he has the like little jackass smirk that he was carrying there. But
well, he definitely went from being like a boy, which is how he definitely looked before with the long hair, to a man. I'm a man.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get into some of the cool things here. So, like I said, we had the beginning there with Eric. They end up at the hut. I thought there were some really interesting beats here with a lot of the different characters, and there was we got a lot of sort of small backstory and like inner workings of our different characters' minds in this episode. And so that was really cool. I think Borman's was really interesting because he was very great in at the beginning of the episode. It's like, why don't you just, put on the cuirass? Borman's like, no. You need to do something epic with it. Like, you got to be fighting or seeing your mom after 2 years of not talking to her or something like that. Like, Borman's thing. And he's asked repeatedly kind of throughout the episode, like, oh, why don't you try it? Why don't you try it? And he's like, no, it's not the right time. And it's like, he's kind of afraid to try it.
Yes, 100%.
And then when he does end up trying it, it doesn't work.
Well, that's the thing, is he tried it, and he starts, like, pounding his chest and everything. It's like, is this thing working, basically? And it's revealed that it seems to not be working.
Yeah. But so that's sort of his storyline, and it was really interesting because he believes he's not worthy of it, and it sort of shows that now. And so I think we'll have some redemption arc with him where he makes himself worthy of it, or whatever. Yeah, he has to have that.
Of course, of course.
I did like Zeb the Ferryman. I thought he was funny, even though we only had him for a little bit. And then we have sort of the fight with the Gales after the ferryman keeps him. This was really cool. Like you had said, Dylan, we have Graydon kind of come out of nowhere and send up this purple lightning bolt, or not bolt, but purple shot that hits the flying Gale and just blows it up. So cool. I was like, yes,
I saw that.
Graydon did magic.
I saw it and I was like, wait, whose color magic is that? Because the Willow is kind of like green and Alora is kind of like bluish. And then I was like, wait, who's purple? And then it shows Graydon be like, yeah, with his flute. And I'm like, oh yeah, go Graydon.
And I thought this was cool. After they like vanquish the Gales, and they stop with, they had the Mudmander who's sort of driving the thing, and he's so cute. Kenneth, so cute. But Alora almost seemed kind of jealous of Graydon, like when they stopped, because Willow comes over and he's like talking to her about the magic or whatnot, and she's like looks at Graydon and then it's like, I want to train. And then this is what starts the training montage. The magic training I thought was really cool. Yep. And then Kit's watching it and she's like, oh yeah, I need to train too. Get over here, Jade. Don't hold back. We're gonna fight. Ah! And then she's like, they're just like, Alora Dannon and Kit are just like staring at each other like, yeah, I'm training harder than you. No, I'm training harder than you. I'm training the hardest. Like,
yes,
it's just very weird. Like,
it really was. It It was the I'm queen bee of the school. No, I'm queen bee of the school type of moment. And it was very teen drama-y. And it was,
Wow.
I mean, I guess that's
Done
what
on
Willow
purpose.
is, but
Yeah. Well, because then it was leading into the end when they're the two
Yeah.
that decide to go over the waterfall, and they're going to be the ones who are confronting Eric.
yeah. I mean, as much as I did like this training montage, and I thought, like, it genuinely had some really cool visuals, genuinely was the highlight of the episode with the cool, like, magic and sword fights and everything like that. I thought that, all in all, like, it was so freaking cheesy. but it was still enjoyable. It was still good. And we finally get to see Jade and Kit kiss, which has been a long time coming since the beginning of the season. So that happened.
My wife was like, she was sitting there watching it with me, and she was just like, so what's the deal with these two? Honestly, she thought that Kit and Laura were going to be the ones who,
right?
Like, what's their deal? They're going to make out or something? Make out. And I was like, no, it's actually her and Jade. And then when they were in that stance where they were, like, really close to each other, she's like, oh, yeah. She's like, just do it. And then 5 minutes later, they finally kiss. She's like, thank goodness.
Right.
Took forever. And it wasn't actually 5 minutes, obviously, but... it was just kind of like, let's go. We already know it's going to happen, so let it happen. In all of this, though, throughout this training montage, after it's done, the team starts getting into this situation where they're running out of food. Kenneth is tired, and Graydon eventually lets Kenneth go because he's like, otherwise he was just going to die.
You just see everyone reaching their breaking point.
Yeah, because there's just... That's the purpose of the Shattered Sea.
Right.
It's to shatter.
Right. Shatters your soul.
Mm-hmm. And we get a lot of cool kind of character beats here with, like I talked about before, Borman, all that self-doubt, like, I'm not worthy. He tries to do the Curious, and as you said, just seems not to work.
Willow and his family.
Even... that's a big... I was going to get to that.
Okay.
I was going to get the small first. Graydon and sort of even Graydon and Laura Dan. Graydon like tells Laura Dan and he just wants to be alone, like, which is so funny because usually he'd jump at the chance of being with her, but he's so empathetic towards Kenneth and he's like, I'm gonna have to let you go and I don't want to like let the others know, like, just leave me alone, Laura. And that leads to a really beautiful moment between Laura and Kit, actually, where they're both like, hey, we've both been acting kind of childish and like, this is what's important to me, and I've always been kind of like, Kit's like, I've been jealous of you, and Laura was like, your dad, sometimes I didn't even want to be Laura Dannon and all this, and there was a couple moments like this, honestly. I'm probably mixing this one up in the one at the waterfall, but it's okay. I thought it was good because to finally get that out, even though halfway through I was just like, I'd like to pick up my phone and just look at something else right now because this has lost my attention a little bit. It was a very visually stunning scene because of all the stars in the sky, though.
It really made me wonder, like, I was like, wait, where is everybody else? Where is the sled they're all riding? Because they seem to kind of like be by themselves in this beautiful, like, starry landscape. And I was like, wait, what's going on?
Don't know. But again, the whole purpose of this is to build together, like, Kit and Laura Dan are the team up.
Right, yeah.
Against her brother and the crone, I guess. Anyway, though, we do get a huge scene here with Willow.
Yes.
We get some more. He's had a couple nightmares where he's seeing his daughter apparently under attack, and he's thinking it's visions of what's actually happening or about to happen. And you finally get out that this is because of, like, he's very riddled with guilt here because apparently something similar had happened and they lost his son or his wife.
So what happened?
Wasn't quite sure on all that.
Yeah, so what I got is that he went on another adventure type of thing, and while he was gone, something happened to his wife where she ends up dying. And his son, as a result of this, runs away and like abandons Willow. So all he has left is his daughter. But yeah, he's super sensitive to all of that about not being there for his family when they need him. He is being racked with guilt, and it is 100% the crone trying to manipulate him to get him to turn away. Just like I feel like the crone or like the evil essence of the Immemorial City is impacting everyone else and making them all on edge too. Because you have Borman's self-doubt like overtaking him. He's lost all his swagger. You have Graydon becoming super empathetic and letting go of the Mudmander there. And just like everyone has been starved and pushed beyond their breaking points. And just the evil that the crone emits, I'm assuming, is just getting to everybody and making them all want to turn around and leave.
Yeah, that's a good point you brought up there about that. I'm wondering too if it's not just the Memorial City, is trying to keep people out, but also if it keeps the crone in.
See, I was wondering if the Immemorial City is actually where she's from, but destroyed.
That was actually Kashmir.
Yeah, that's actually Kashmir.
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of hope we get some more information on that. I think you wouldn't be wrong. And honestly, though, I think she's probably like trapped there. Otherwise, why wouldn't she go out and do all this stuff herself?
Right, she needs her minions.
So I'm wondering if that's part of it too. I don't know. We'll find out. We did get some more information though here on the worm because Elora Danan, when they were fighting the Gales, touched the Lich, or which one of them, and she sort of sees the crone through, and the crone's then sort of been like following her, whispering in her ear and such. She asks Willow about what the worm was, and Willow says that the worm is a parasite that feeds on magic and that it's sleeping. And she's like, well, what happens if it wakes? And he sort of has like this dream of like, his daughter being under siege, basically. And so it's implied very heavily that if the worm wakes, it's going to feast probably on magic, I would assume, which is the lifeblood of the universe. So that would then have
destroy the universe,
ramifications on everyone.
Yeah.
It's it's not quite explained all the way, but there's enough there. It'll be interesting too, because I feel like the crone will probably explain at some point. We'll get her opinion and
you're gonna get the villain monologue,
her perspective on all of it, and it'll help us understand like what she did to her city. Probably that like she was like, I was going to free them, but they couldn't accept that, and so they destroyed themselves or something.
Right. They forced me to kill them.
Basically, something like that. But it's interesting. There's a lot of nuggets here where I'm just like, I really just want to know more about the world and like what's going on here with this. I will say this episode, some of the acting was definitely like, left something to be decided.
Honestly, that's the whole season.
I know. It was definitely very noticeable in this episode, though.
Yeah.
But I thought this was kind of I want to go back just for a second to Graydon and Elora Danan.
Sure, yeah.
When Graydon's like talking to Kenneth and petting him and talking to Elora Danan, he starts like scratching his shoulder.
Yeah.
And that made me think like maybe he almost has like an evil detector type thing from where he was infected. Because there wasn't really much of an explanation there, but I was like, maybe that's also like why he's like, he could sense the crone's essence kind of on Elora Danan and it was aggravating him. So maybe he was just like, leave me alone.
Maybe. And well, I also do think like he asked Elora to leave him alone because like you said, he wanted to be alone and when he let Kenneth go. But that could be a good reason. Like if he could kind of feel some evil presence near Elora, kind of scratching it, that is a plausible reason. The other thing I just thought of is like he has this giant scar across his chest. And so if you know anything about a scar, if you have a scar, it itches. So scratching his scar.
Well, usually not one that's sent from when you were 8.
That's very true. It's a fresh wound that itches. So like scratching at it. I don't know like.
But he was attacked, by Ballantyne.
I was going to say, I don't know if during the Ballantyne fight and stuff like that, if that wound was the one he was scratched, and I forget where he got stabbed or whatever.
Yeah, I feel like it might have been. It was probably that or something. But yeah, overall though, my thoughts on this episode was it was good. I liked the magic elements. I liked the different sort of background information we got about some of the different locations. Kashmir, the worm, like all very good. I want more. I want to really just. I love that they're starting to explain some of the stuff, but I just would like a little bit.
Yeah, just all in all, same thing for me. Like, I did enjoy this episode. I thought that there was a lot to like with the training montages, the traveling across the Shattered Sea, how it impacted everybody. I really liked all of that stuff. What I didn't like about this episode, though, was just that it felt like it was trying to do a lot in such a little amount of time, and it felt so full and so rushed almost, despite it being the longest episode.
Should have split this episode up, yeah.
Maybe. It wouldn't have been too entertaining if they did, though, I don't think.
I'm just saying, how I said it before, I think would have been good.
I agree with that, yes. Like, a flashback next episode, yeah. But yeah, all in all, again, I just feel like more. That's kind of like my general consensus of what I think about the Willow series in general so far. It's like, I'm left wanting. And, like, that's an okay thing. It makes you want to watch.
I think that's a good thing because it means there's enough here that we're interested in, right? And we care enough that we're like, I'd like to know a little bit more.
But yeah, I mean, I also think, though, it's a bad thing, too, in the sense that no one episode so far has felt complete, has felt enough. It's always been like, this is good, but it could have been so much better if it did a little bit here or there. So, again, all in all, I'm excited to see how this wraps up. I want to see how, because it's going to happen, not if, how they beat Eric, how they beat the Crone, and where things end for season 1 of Willow. Because I don't know if there's a season 2 planned or not, but we'll see.
Don't know. Haven't looked into it. We'll look into it
after we're done.
Watching the last episode.
All right, but that's going to do it for the two of us. So let us know if you guys have any questions about, like, or any theories about, like, how you think Willow will end if you haven't seen it already. If you have any predictions for a continuation, if there's a season 2 or not. What you've liked about the series, what you've not liked about the series. Just your general thoughts. It'd be interesting to see what other folks are thinking. All right, but that's going to do it for us. So that's going to be Two Nerds signing off. We'll see you next time.
See ya.